the hardest part when you are a perfectionist who doesn't start things because you're afraid of failure is starting those things. If you want to be someone, if you have an idea of who you are, like, just be that person, but you don't need to spend your life polishing up who that person is to the rest of the world.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Highest Version Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about falling in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. I'm your host, Randy Philibong, and today's guest is Amanda Ngo. She graduated from Brown University and is a teacher that has gone rogue. Just kidding. She's working to figure out the next steps in her life, just like all of us. During her time at Brown University, she actually had her own radio show called Asking for a Friend. She sat down with her best friend talking about the topics I think every college kid thinks about, and honestly, people in our 20s too, which is passion, dating, sex, and our own struggles. Amanda is very talented and has many talents besides herself being really tall. She has a passion for creative writing. She's bilingual. She's actually looking to be trilingual as well. But Amanda actually identifies herself as a person with acts of service, and most importantly, being a big sister and being a role model for her younger sister. So let's welcome Amanda. Hey.
Hello. That was such a warm welcome.
I hope I've been really working on those introductions to make sure they hit. So I'm hoping that was a good summary of what you gave me, and I hope it resonated with you. So
yeah, definitely. And you gave me so much credit for so many things. I'm just like, dang, I feel like I need to give that type of credit to myself.
yes, you should. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it. And obviously we know each other through my partner, Michelle, and through our friends. So yeah, no, I feel like, I think from the jump when we first met, I feel like there's something, I guess like an aura, or even thinking about it as in high school, I think if we knew each other, I think we would be good friends, just because we would be talking about deep shit, which is sometimes I didn't talk about, but that with my other friends, but that's something that I was very passionate about. So yeah, no, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love talking, as we know from my radio show. So I'm really happy to be here to talk about things that, as much as the contents of my radio show in college, as important as they were to me, I also think talking about mental health and one's progress and journeys and healing and struggle and going through their struggles is equally, if not more important. So
yeah, for sure. So before we get into it, I do want to highlight the Funko Pop of the episode, and it's Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender. When I reached out to you, I asked, any favorite shows and stuff like that, and you highlighted Avatar: The Last Airbender. I was like, perfect. I was like, what tribe are you? And you're like, Earth. And I was like, okay, great. I'll get Toph. But why? What resonates your personality with the Earth Kingdom? Just curious.
Oh my god, I can give such a long answer for this. I'll give you my non-serious answer first, then my serious answer. I think in the non-serious sense, I feel like when I was young, I've always known. So I am queer. I've always known that, and I didn't know it really within actual words when I was watching Avatar. But I remember, I don't know, I was young, 6 or something, and I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. I saw Toph, and I'm like, oh my god, she's so strong, she's so sarcastic, she's so witty and resilient. Oh, I want to be her so bad. But in hindsight, I think I had a little bit of a crush on Toph as a kid. But I think in the more serious sense, I think the Earth Kingdom and the way they showcased a lot of the people within the kingdom as people who honestly struggled but worked so hard to maintain their abilities and work so hard to resist against the Fire Nation. I do think there was a level of grit and resilience that I have a weird relationship with grit and resilience nowadays, if you ask me. But I think as a kid, I always kind of believed in being very stubborn and going against your challenges no matter how difficult they were. And so that's something that resonated with me. If you ask me as an adult, though, resilience and grit is a double-edged sword, and I don't have the same relationship with them anymore.
Yeah, I could definitely see how I just it's good to be resilient, but there's also a very huge cost to it, for sure. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Can you guess what tribe that I would be?
I feel like air. Is that am I off? I don't know. I feel like you're very at peace, and I feel like tranquility is something that is core to you, and that's kind of what I associate with air.
Yeah. I actually, when I took the quizzes, I've actually always answered fire.
Really?
Yeah,
I would not
yeah.
have guessed.
No, yeah. When I read like the reasoning for it, they said it's because of like a passion, like you're a
Okay.
fiery passion,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Trust me. When I was like, when they told me I was part of the Fire Nation, I was like, why? No. But because I thought I was air too, or like water, because like flow. But like
Right.
when I think about it with water, I was like, I don't flow with things. Like I need structure, I need plans.
That makes sense.
But air, like yeah, like very like tranquility. But yeah, fire. The more I thought about it, I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense because just with my own passions, especially with this too, like I'm going like really deep into it, and like I mean, if you look around, like this is like I don't know, I could not imagine like building a studio like this and putting this much time into it. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
And I mean, like, Zuko also has one of the greatest redemptive arcs of all time. So, like,
yes,
not that you've done anything that horrible
yeah,
or horrible at all,
yeah, yeah,
but I think in terms of redemption, growth, and healing, very spot on, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch the live action?
I have not, because I don't want it to. I know that it's not going to hold a candle to the animation because what can, because you have nostalgia and you have such great writing. And I know that I probably wouldn't love it as much. So I haven't like dove into it.
Yeah, no, trust me, I had that same caution. Obviously, I don't think anything will own up to the animation,
Yeah.
but I do think it's way better than that movie that they did like
Oh, yeah.
so far back.
Yeah.
But like they actually got the names right. Like yeah. Like what I think when like Aang was called Ong, and
Yeah.
I was like, all right, like
Yeah, I think it was M. Night Shyamalan who directed that, and I think that was a blot on his career, honestly, but whatever.
yeah. All right. Speaking aside, let's get into it. Let's get into who you are. So let's start with your childhood. Like, what events can you think about that really has shaped you as the person, at least like maybe up into either now or even like your high school days?
Okay, childhood. I think, I feel like so much of what I was listening on Tara's podcast like has is coming up, but it's interesting because as I was listening to it, um, I realized how different my upbringing was actually from her experience, but also maybe a lot of other Asian Americans, particularly around here. Um, I, having gone to live in Rhode Island and Baltimore, I've gotten to know what, people's lives and like upbringings were like elsewhere. And I've learned that in New England, and particularly in Boston, I do think there is a level of like high expectations that we have within the Asian American community here. Not to say that there's lack of expectations elsewhere, but it almost feels like hyper focused here. I do think that growing up around this area, like everyone is very driven and very ambitious, but almost in a almost we almost have tunnel vision for one thing. Because I know that like in like my friend group, like everyone feels like incredibly like high achieving, but like, and I don't say this as a compliment or an insult, but it's kind of like we were all gunning for it in high school, gunning for it in like our adult lives and stuff, to land jobs in like very lucrative, prestigious fields. And like I've learned that that's like not a very normal thing to have that so core to like everyone that you grew up with, because that's the way it is with my friend group and the way with my family. That's all to say that even though that seems to be the trend with our immediate communities here, in our respective high schools and such and school district, um, I in hindsight I think I'm very grateful that my mom didn't have those expectations for me, um, or at least not so explicitly. I think a lot of, if you ask a lot of my peers, like I'm sure they would say like, my parents were really, tough on me and wanted me to do well in school, this, that, and the other. And my mom was like, for in like elementary school, like I would study hard and I would get my hundreds on my tests and all that. And it was always like, let me check your agenda book, let me check your homework, let me check your thing for flyers. And honestly, as a former teacher and like hopefully eventually returning to the classroom teacher, I think that's great, like to have that foundation, right? You want to look out for your kids, you want to show your kids that you care about how they're doing in school and what they're doing, and you want to pay attention. But by the time I hit middle school, even my mom said this, she was like, you started doing coursework that I could not help you with. Like I couldn't help you with that type of math. I couldn't help you that with English. I couldn't help you with like history. And so like at that point, like I was hard on you in elementary school to like give you that foundation, but like in middle and high school, like that, it was very hands off. And I think my mom and honestly my dad too, but I don't really talk about my dad that much, and you can ask me about him later, but my dad and I have a rocky relationship. um I think by the time I hit middle school, I kind of like built a like work ethic for myself where I started holding myself to certain standards, but it wasn't so much my mom anymore. I don't think I realized that though. I think like if you were to ask middle school me, I'd be like, I gotta do this because my mom's gonna be disappointed. I gotta, get into this club. I gotta like, do this many volunteer hours. I gotta like ace this class because I don't want to disappoint my mom. But I've come to realize that that is kind of something that I built in my own head because I think like she had worked me to have a certain standard for myself, and then that became my own standard. And then for a long time I was like externalizing it, and I was like, oh, my mom wants me to do this. But like, as an adult now, like I've had a lot of conversations with her, and she'd bring up how she never had to worry about me anymore, and I like didn't realize how hands off she was afterwards. And I to explain how that like ties to me now, I feel like a part of it a part of it has drilled me into being kind of a perfectionist, but I can no longer really like attribute to that to anything specific in my childhood, right? When I was a kid, I used to say it was because of my parents, but I do think that like I ended up being the type of person who excelled at school, and like I excelled at school um in like all of my disciplines, but then that also showed me that like I didn't really know how to fail. And so like I became a person who like only cared about being perfect the first time and pursuing things that I could be perfect at for the first time. Because the validation felt so good from my mom, right? And then by the time I got to like middle school and high school, I was just like all I had to do was do good at school, and that was what I was good at. But I didn't get a chance to experience what failure was like because like I had that like repeating like feedback loop of like me being proud of myself and mom being proud of me. And so I never took as many chances outside of school. Um, so that was like the start of me becoming a perfectionist, even though I didn't really know it then, right? I just thought it was a matter of like doing well because like that's the culture we grow up with, right? The idea of us having to do well.
Yeah.
Dang, I've been talking a whole bunch.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. I have a lot to unpack here.
Yeah,
No, just in
no.
that in itself, like you as you're growing up, it's very malleable, and the whole perspective of you saying like, oh, like obviously your mom was hard on you in elementary school, but then in middle school you like picked that up yourself. So in a way, like even though you said it was your mom, because obviously it was probably like your mom in your head saying the things, but it's so true because like at that point it's like you made the choice to hold yourself to those high standards, and I guess I never really thought about that because for me my event was my parents talking about war, escaping war, what they've had to give up, what they had to gone through in order for me to get the things that I need, or build this life that I want, which is obviously a very beautiful life. But like, I guess I just never really thought about it that way, and especially as children, like very malleable there. And when you said like, oh, like your mom couldn't help you at some point with math, have you watched Incredibles 2?
I definitely have at some point, but I don't remember the plot of the movie,
Okay.
so you can't quiz me on it.
No, that's good. There's a part, and I'm pretty sure it was in the trailer where Mr. Incredible was helping Dash, and he was like, "They changed math. Like, why did they do math differently?" And that's what I thought of when you said that. But I think going back to it is you got the validation from your mom in elementary school. Was that ever? Did she say like, "I'm proud of you," or was it just like a good job?
Um, this is so difficult for me to parse out now because my younger sister, she does tell my younger sister, like, both through K through 12 and through college now, like, I'm proud of you. Like, she's very vocal about that. And so right now, like, my memory's a little blurred because I'm like, dang, did she ever say she was proud of me? I I don't know if she was as forthcoming. I think my mom has always been supportive and kind, but I do think that she has grown kinder over the years, or at least more explicitly so. I feel like at least growing up, she probably was like, "Oh, like you're doing good for you, not for me." And like it's funny because like she recognized that, right? But I didn't recognize that because she would say, "You're doing good for you, for your future, not for me." Like I did my right. Ooh, my bad. I
No, you can
did my.
swear. It's okay. You're good. You're good. What are we
I
talking
told myself I
about?
wasn't gonna swear. But that never clocked in my head, right? I was just like, oh, like I'm doing good for my mom, doing good for my mom. Because, like, honestly, I think as a kid, I didn't know what I was passionate about until like high school. And so a lot of the stuff, like the assignments I did, like I didn't care for it, right? So I'm just like, well, I don't care for it for myself. Like I'm doing this for my family, right? Because like similar to you, like you mentioned, like your family escaped war and came here for a better life. Um, I also had that like mentality in my head that like my family did put a lot of sacrifices to get me here, and that like I had to pay it back in some way. So I do think like that, knowing that, and knowing that I do have the tendency just to be a perfectionist and liking that validation, I think that was like the perfect storm for me to become the person that I am now, who's kind of, I'm a little neurotic, like
Mm.
I was even texting my friend today because I was trying to make this cake, first time I ever made this cake, and I was just like, bro, the chocolate didn't, it seized, like I made a mistake, and they're like, isn't this your first time? And I'm like, no, but I have to be perfect each and every time. And that's something I'm working through now. And I can joke about it a little bit, but it like is a voice in your head a bit.
Yeah.
But I do want to say one other point about the family sacrifice, because this actually came up in conversation because a friend of mine was asking me yesterday, and she was like, do you feel like you achieved your parents' vision of what an American dream is? And like something that I read in college, and I wish I could quote it, but I can't because college was so far away at this point. Um, I think something that added to the level of stress and perfectionism in my life was that the idea of the American dream, right, is that your parents sacrificed their lives to come here and to give you a better life. But the person who wrote this article that I'm trying to quote was saying how it actually, the idea of an American dream, like it creates an endless cycle, right? Because your parents come here and they say, okay, here's your better life. And a lot of the times, if you ask them, not all parents are going to say, I expect my child to repay me by getting X, Y, and Z level of prestige. But a lot of the times, even if their parents never say this to them, the kid ends up taking on that own burden, right? And like imagining what their parents' expectation of American dream is. My mom and dad has never ever told me my American dream is blank. But growing up, I was just like like their American dream must be for me to like become a doctor, engineer, da da da, this, that, and the other. And so like that also in a way became what I self imposed, because I was just like, well, they're not gonna say it, but I take on this additional burden that they never asked me to take on because like I can only guess at what they want. But that also meant that for a long time I felt like I was doing things just for them and like putting off any sense of like any passion or what I want. And I think because I actually did that growing up, this has become a recurring trend in my life, not just like with like, things I want to study or things I want to do, but like also just in my mannerisms. Like now, if anyone ever asks, like, "Oh, Amanda, like, what do you want for dinner?" I'll be like, "Oh, what do you want?" Right? I'm always like putting it on the other person because I learned this more recently about myself, like in the last few years, that I have never asked myself what I wanted, big or small. So it's been a journey to figure out what that is now.
But I do resonate with figuring like what you want and stuff like that. And I always thought about like I never really asked that question of what I want. It was always like what my parents wanted me to do. Obviously, like your parents said, have like doctor, lawyer, all that stuff. But I was like not that good at science, can't handle blood, whatever. So that moves up doctor, lawyer, long bar exam, can't do it. I'm not good at taking tests. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe there's business. I'm not gonna do with business, so that's why I became an accountant. But that's like for like I kind of chose that route in security, and to say like I'm still on that path and still trying to figure it out, which is fine. But then now, especially creating this is like I ask myself, what do I want? And I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying it. At the end of the day, if this doesn't go in the span that I think it is, I just know I tried. And then I think it's so great that you brought up the whole American dream thing, because it is an endless cycle. When I think about my parents and how I want to give back to them, bro, I was thinking like, oh, like I give them a house, like give them a nice vacation house, or I give my dad like a Mercedes, whatever. Um, but at the end of the day, like they just want to see their kids happy. I mean, my mom's been asking me to pay like a little bit more of her bills, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, all right, let me get there first. Let me get there first. But it's like taking care of them, and I actually wrote a eulogy as part of one of my therapy exercises, which I didn't make it as if I died. I made it as if like I just reached a certain milestone in my life, just because the whole idea of death
That's
gives
a
me
lot.
so much
No,
anxiety.
yeah, I hear you.
But in that, like, I was like, oh, the biggest gift that I want to give to my parents is showing them their country, because the last picture perspective they seen of it was just like a very war torn country. Like, there's death around them. Like, they went through a lot of turmoil, and you saw a lot of shit that, we didn't have to see. That's why they came here. And I said that, and this one made me and my therapist tear up. I said, like, the last, like, Randy gave his parents the greatest gift of all, where he felt like he finally repaid them back. And that was taking them back to Laos so that their last memory of their country wasn't a war-torn country, but a beautiful, promising land. Um, and that made me tear up, because I was like, I
That's
think,
gonna make me tear up.
yeah, I was like,
Damn.
I think I finally figured out what I think is not per se the American dream, but how I'm gonna repay my parents. And in high school and all that stuff, like the only thing I thought about is money, and that in itself is such an endless cycle, and it sucks because that's all you strive for, and you just know as you grow older you realize like there's not enough money to like show them how much you love them.
Yeah.
First of all, love wasn't even a thing, like even a word for us to really comprehend when
Right.
we were younger.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's hard too because like, well, my relationship with money is like very like, oh my God, money can't I understand people who are like, oh, money can't buy happiness. And I am of that camp. I'm also not like ignorant to the fact that like money can change our material circumstances, right? So it's really interesting because you're right. Like I think like, I I also think a lot about money and like and somehow repaying my parents, but it's weird because I feel this level of love for my mom where I'm like it can't be quantified by this money, right? So why am I chasing after like this infinite bag to like
Yeah,
give her like
yeah.
what? Like I can't do anything. I can't like fulfill that, but I do want to make my mom's life easier, right? And like I totally feel that about like paying back bills. Like to like this month I like paid my mom an extra like $150 because like I help with utilities, and then I was just like whatever for groceries.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's like nice to be able to like show that care, even though it does come in the form of money. But it was a really beautiful eulogy, I think, because like I think you take it beyond just like care in our everyday sense, like here's some money to like support our household, and to more almost like a bigger life sense, a grander sense, right? Because you're right that like yeah, our families probably their lasting memories of their home countries is like war torn.
Yeah.
Have your parents been back to Laos since?
My mom has been back for like work. She's been to Thailand and stuff, but not. I don't think back to like her school or her land. My dad hasn't. My dad actually he's been dealing with some medical issues, and that in itself is a whole mental thing. But I really do want to take him back, and even if it takes for him to be in first class, like I'll fork up that money, because I'm
Yeah.
just like I want him to experience stuff. And I know how much my dad cares about me. Like I know that we grew a great relationship, even though I know he was so tough on me,
Yeah.
and my mom too, to be successful, because my brother didn't meet the standards that my parents had. And that was for me at the time. I was like, bro, like help me out, like please, like do something to their standards. But the more I grew up, the more I realized like he was just being authentic to himself, and that's something that I couldn't do. I was such a people pleaser in high school, and all that to say, like they haven't been back. I wanna if I visit, I wanna go back with my mom so that she can show me, how she grew up and stuff. Because my mom was I think it's the reverse of the "Don't Stop Believing" lyrics.
Yeah.
My mom was a big city girl, and then my dad lived in the country. Wait, small town? No, a small town girl.
Yeah.
Okay, get it. But my mom was a big city girl. My dad was the village boy, and like
Yeah.
he'd be saying some like craziest stories about how like his pool was just a lake, and like his bungee board was like the tree branch, and sometimes you just pick the wrong tree branch and then you fall, and I'm like okay, and then my mom's over here like, what are you talking about? Like I had a yo-yo, and I'm like, okay, obviously you guys come from different spaces, but I want to see those stories come to fruition, and I would just love to have that moment with them, because I think like you said, like it's when you get, I think at the time, like I grew resentment a little bit to my parents. I knew what they did, but like it put me such in a stressful anxiety kind of mindset to be perfect. And to be honest, like I didn't really get the validation that I wanted. Growing up in a white town, um, the kids be getting like "I love you" and all that stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Could I get that from my parents? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard my parents ever say that. If anything, it's because my therapist. I've said it more so that they
Yeah.
could say it. They still don't say it unless I say it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am like, every single time I think about it, I am so grateful that like I think my mom clearly has been doing the work to like break these generational curses for sure. Um, I, I, I'm thinking about it now, and I definitely don't think that she. I think what made her warm actually is my mom when I was in high school, my mom had was diagnosed with breast cancer,
Mm.
and I think like, oh my god, I'm always gonna tear up when I talk about this, even though she's fine now. But I do think having that difficult diagnosis and procedure and chemo, like, like there was a time where like you were like, oh my God, like, is she gonna be here? Right? Like, I remember my mom was like never the type of person who cried, like, ever, like, at all. Like, she would be like, don't cry, like, the classic stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I would know that she cares and she would never be like that in a harsh way, but she would always say those things. But I remember, like, you know, the way I found out about my mom having cancer also was just ridiculous. Like
Mm.
she wasn't telling me anything. I didn't have any suspicions. Like I knew she was one of the doctors, but I was like, whatever, like regular stuff. But my mom locked herself out of her Gmail, and so she's like, "Can you figure out how to reset my password?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I go in. I'm in high school at this point. I'm like maybe junior year,
Okay.
senior year.
So your most stressful times in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whatever. I go into her little Gmail and I see like appointments, oncologists, whatever. And then like I realized that my mom had breast cancer, but she was hiding it for like months. And then like when I didn't bring it up because I didn't even know how to have that conversation with my mom. Because like what child's gonna ask their mom if they have cancer? Right? It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But eventually, right, eventually she tells me, and I'm just like, I know because I saw in your email, and I can't believe you didn't tell me. And she's like, I don't want to worry you. And that's the other thing. Like, if anything, in terms of like the classic Asian parent stereotype, the thing that my mom falls into is like not telling me things because she's afraid she's gonna burden me with it. But I also feel that same way, right? Like I think
Yeah.
like that's kind of a cycle that we have within my family, and I know in a lot of other Asian American families as well. Like this fear of burdening our parents, and our parents are afraid of burdening us. Like we're all carrying a lot on our own, right? And we don't
Yeah.
feel like we can have those conversations all the time.
For sure.
And I remember when she finally told me, right, like she was like, we were in our basement, like we were just, I helped my mom with laundry because like she can't always reach into the little like the washing drum.
And because
so,
you're so talented that
yeah,
you can actually reach
yeah,
it.
I'm 5'9" in case anyone wants to know. So I would like reach in and help her, and then she was just like, I need to tell you what all our like family like safe codes, passwords, this, that, and the other, because like I got diagnosed, like I'm just doing it as a precaution. I don't know what's gonna happen. But then like here I am like holding my like waterlogged jeans, and they're wet and it's cold, and like I have a t-shirt on and I'm crying, my mom is crying, we're just holding my wet jeans, and I was just like, bro, this is like the worst moment in my entire life. But I think after that, like I think so. My family has always been Buddhist, but I do think that my mom like really dove into spirituality a little bit more, religion a little bit more, because that was what like brought her comfort in her illness. And I do think that after the fact, like she was a lot more expressive. I love you, I care about you, I'm proud of you, and you know, I I do think that like I also was too, because I think growing up, like I don't think it's not that I wouldn't say I love you, but I think I wouldn't have been the first.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that she's better now. But truly, another big silver lining is that like we definitely got closer, because I think there was like a level of like understanding that we came to afterwards. And so I do think that this is going back to your original question. Given like my perfectionist tendencies, but also my mom's like deep empathy and kindness, and like this big thing that happened to my mom in high school, I do think that I turned out to be a person who was able to at least take it a little bit easier on myself afterwards, like after high school. I think I was not taking it easy on myself in high school, but going into college, I did. First of all, when I got into Brown, I was like, I'm gonna study cog neuro. I took 4 cog neuro classes, and I'm like, this is not good. I just dove headfirst into English, and I felt like really afraid for it, because again, I was just like, how am I gonna repay my parents with an English degree?
Yep.
And I also like going back to this idea of not knowing like what not knowing what I want for myself. Like I knew that I liked English. I knew that it was something I was good at, but I'm like, is it something I'm good at or something that I cared about? So it felt like a big risk for me to study it. But I mean, it's ended up being what I loved. And I totally missed out on mentioning that the fact that starting in middle school throughout high school, I started a Tumblr. No one look it up now. But I wrote all my poetry and put it on there, and it got like 5,000 followers. And so
Dang.
it got pretty big, and that's kind of when I knew that I had something. I don't know if I'm gonna say I had what it takes or have what it takes to be a creative, but I had something there that I was passionate about. And that was the only time that I ever let myself do something that I wanted to do and that I could like stand behind and say, I'm really, really, really proud of this. And then like, it is kind of sad, and it's something that I'm trying to tap back into now on my creative journey, because I hadn't been writing. After college, like I stopped really writing. That blog is now defunct. No one look it up. I'm not going to say the URL.
There's a lot of secrets here that I think you're keeping from us.
No. I don't know about it. No, but it's in the moments where I feel kind of the most down on myself with my creative juice. Like I remember that like, middle school Amanda, like whether it was because like I already was like, oh, like the worst that can happen is like I'm not good at this or whatever, or maybe it was because I knew I was good at it for my age, right? Because I was only pursuing things that I was good at, and I was like, like my writing's okay, I guess. I had a level of confidence in myself that doesn't really exist now as an adult, and I'm trying to find that again.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with being okay with failing, right? Because as a kid, if you fail, you're just like, well, I'm 14 years old. What can you do?
Yeah.
But now, like being 25, I'm like, dang, if I fail at 25, that's
it's
hard.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. I think what you said, obviously, I'm glad your mom's okay, and it's a beautiful story. We'll get more into it after we take a break. All right, guys, welcome back. All right, so let's go back to the original topic. And I think something that really keyed out to me was doing what you want. And actually the response that you said as a 14-year-old saying like, oh, I'm 14, like whatever. But to me, as a 14-year-old, I was like, if I fuck up, it's over. It's done. My life is over. But now I'm like, you know what? I think that's just with dealing with perfectionism and getting through it with therapy, to be like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? What mistake can I make? Can I give myself the compassion? And obviously the answer is always yes. But I think a funny thing relating to, it's like non-mental health, but it's so like high school, which is so stupid. You're gonna get to know about how I was as a high school kid
Yeah, I'm so excited.
College. But in high school, and you brought this whole thing about like not wanting to fail, right? I took this to every part of my life, including dating. So I I felt like I couldn't handle rejection. So it took me a very long time to admit like if I did like someone or if I knew I liked them, I was like, okay, I'm in 100% back. Like, and I do want to say like I didn't date them just because they liked me back. I did it because I had a mutual, understanding there.
I was gonna say we need to call Michelle in right
No, no,
now.
no. Well, she rejected me first.
Wait, I actually did not know that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
We'll
yeah.
unpack on
I'll back
another
another one. Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. But it took me so long, especially with someone that. So one of my exes I had a 2 year crush on. High school. That's like half of your year. And I didn't tell her till like my senior year, which is at the time like I thought it was just not good timing. Like we were going to two different colleges, and like I didn't really have a car, long distance, all that stuff. Like um, but I felt like if I didn't take that long and just said it, like I think obviously I would have known easier what the answer would be. She also rejected me at first and then came back around later, and I was like, "What the is this?" I feel like everybody I like just like rejects me and then comes back later. It's like, "Oh, I realized the type of guy he is," and I'm like, um, all that to say, it was really hard for me to take certain failures, and that really flowed through every part of my life with academics, dating life, basketball, like sports. Like I usually with basketball, like you can take mini shots and like you'll probably only shoot like under 50%. There's like barely anyone that can shoot over that on a nightly basis. But I always thought about that every time I shot. I was like, oh, I'm missing a lot. I'm not gonna shoot anymore because my percentage is down or something like that. And then like obviously another component of that is confidence, which I didn't really have. And then I think I'm not sure if you said if it was when you were younger you had more confidence, or was it now you have more confidence?
It was definitely younger, and I only confidence in one aspect, right? Because I knew that I was good at writing. I knew that I liked writing. I knew I was good at writing, and I even surprised myself when I pursued this because I knew I was good, but putting it out into the world was new. And I think, but that was the only time I can recall that I did something and put myself out there. Um, and so I did have that confidence, right? But it was like it was so rare for me. Like I don't know. I wish I could talk to my middle school self and be like, what gave you that? What gave you the balls to do that?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, because
yeah.
like I was like, oh, no, it's a Tumblr, right? Because I think I was also like reposting dumb stuff on my own Tumblr, so I was like, what I write can't be any dumber than the stuff that I post now.
Yeah. Is that okay? That gave you that confidence. Okay, so I completely agree. Like when I was younger, I had like the freaking like I was up there like confidence wise, like embarrassingly like I have the song like Danza Kuduro, like it's like uh oi 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 oi
Oh,
oi,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So in my Spanish middle school class I sang that song in front of everyone for no reason. I just said, hey, can I sing this song in front of the whole class? And my teacher said, yeah. And I just did it. And I was like, what the I was like, how do I have that confidence? And then I did a winter version of Sexy and I Know It. And instead of Sexy and I Know It, I said, I'm a snowman and I know it.
Okay.
And I did that in front of a class. And
Dang.
I had literally all the confidence in the world. I was like, what happened? Like, where did it go wrong? Not go wrong, but where did I lose that
Yeah.
confidence? And I think it's just because like maybe I was comfortable or I actually did not actually gave zero. But now or in college, like or sorry, high school and college, I was like super afraid to like do things because I didn't want to mess up anything, create a burden, fail, all those sort of things. So yeah, I totally resonate with that confidence piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the older we get, the more we know about like I guess maybe a part of it is like, oh, we know that as kids we can people can always attribute our failures to us being kids, right? But whereas now it's just kind of like you do see other people our age who are successful, so you're just like, dang, if I fail, like why can't I like aspire to or like reach the level that my peers are at, right? Um and but I also do think that we get so much. I shouldn't generalize, But I do think that it's easier for kids to take risks than it is for adults to take risks, right? Because now if we take risks, it's like I can put all my time and effort into this, but that also is like the time that I could have spent at work, or time I could have spent, going out, time I could have spent, I don't know, doing something else, right? Or like I got bills to pay, I got like volunteer to do, I got all these other things, and it's like if I invest all my time in something that I care about, it feels like a, not to sound like an econ. I took one econ class. It's like the opportunity cost, right?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like, dang, like what if I fail and then it's gonna feel like a sunken cost. Sorry, this is not an econ podcast.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So in high school, like, how did you? Obviously, you had this high standards of yourself. How did you do that, and then just balance, just being a regular high schooler?
I mean, I feel like, I don't think there was balance is the answer. Like I on like, on the daily, if I had to stay up till like 1, 2, 3 a.m., like that is what it is. Like I remember like my parents do not turn on the thermostat because they save money. My house insulation trash. I remember like winters would be so bad because like I would be up until 3 a.m. and I'd like plug in the freaking space heater right next to me and I'd be like shivering, like doing my little like calculus homework. Like it was horrible. But then like I think like in my head, like it was just kind of like, this is what you're good at, this is what you can do. Like this is all you can do. So just be the best at it. Right.
Yeah.
And like I think that saying that, but also like in my head, it's so hard to remember because I don't think I had a goal as a kid. Like besides like doing well in the test, like those are my goals, right? But like you could do as good as you want in all the tests, but you don't have a bigger goal. Like you get a little bit aimless lost, and that's where I was like in college, because I think uh it's really easy to dedicate yourself wholly and completely to doing well in school when you don't have a goal outside of that.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you did, like if I knew that I like really, really wanted to go big and deep into my writing, um, I think I would have been like, do I really need to like, stay up till 4 a.m. doing this chem homework? Or like should I like stay up reading this like cool thing that like this author whose style I want to adopt? Like, I didn't do those. Right? I had my little blog on my side, but school was still kind of like the only thing I really focused on. So,
Yeah.
um, long story short, like there was no balance, right? Outside of those little times when I did have time to write in my blog, like I just dedicated myself to school and like what looked good on a resume. Because I guess the next tangible goal was college, but I didn't even know what I wanted out of college.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's by the time I got there, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that you chose obviously something that you are passionate about, huge props to you. Like I feel like a lot of Asian Americans and honestly people who are first gen feel that way. Like they have to pick the stereotypical like whatever will make the most money. But the fact that at the end of the day you still chose something that really resonated with you or you're passionate about, like I couldn't do that. I mean, I did pick accounting, but my other degree was in sports management because I was like, oh, like that's something that's very cool. That's something I'm always surrounded by. And, again, like I said before, accounting was more of a security thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like you just did something not a lot of people could do. So major props to you on that.
Thank you. I think it was really tough, and I think it brought on a lot of guilt. And like even now, I still feel like I'm reckoning with that guilt. Like I don't think I've processed it fully. Like, making that decision. In a perfect world, I made that decision, and I'm just like, I'm gonna run with this, and this is what it is. But like, I still have thoughts in my head where I'm just like, damn, like maybe I should have just like done a practical major and then like lived a different life. But I can't get lost in those thoughts because like those what ifs are gonna kill you. But I also knew that when I was in college, I was just like, I was lucky to be surrounded by peers who were really passionate about things that they wanted to do, and like I was like, I don't feel that passion when I think about anything other than English or writing. And like the thought of, I don't know, just like dedicating myself to like a course of study where I didn't feel anything, like I didn't think that I could be perfect there.
Yeah.
Right. But not only that, but I don't think that like, it's kind of hard to explain, but I feel like my idea of perfection can only be reached if I care about it super, super, super deeply, right? If I could be like perfect at, let's say, like, I don't know, studying the brain in the most technical sense, right? But if I don't care about it, I'm never gonna reach that extra level of like, you know what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. I know what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, yeah.
And so that's how I felt about English. That's not to say that I think like I no longer have any confidence in my writing abilities. So even though I said like that was what guided me to choosing what I ended up studying, but I don't necessarily feel like it has materialized.
But you're getting in the reps, like you're getting back into it. So I
Yeah.
think obviously like something will just click and you'll get right back to it.
Well, that's the hope.
That's
I
the
don't
goal.
know. I actually gotta, open my laptop and write, but yeah, I stop every now and then. And the last time I worked on the short story that I started when I moved back was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago. So it's been a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Just going back to, I guess, obviously you're big in mental health and very advocate for it. Did you notice these things while you were in high school? Were you very self-aware in high school about these mental health issues?
I I do feel like I do feel like I was a big like internet kid, right? And I do think I was on the side of the internet where we were talking about mental health, but in a very like I think this is I'm trying to tap into exactly what the discourse about mental health was at that age, but it was very like it felt very all or nothing, and it felt very grave all the time. Because I remember like we grew up around the time of like the book, at least 13 Reasons Why, not the show. And like when we talked about mental health, we talked about it in a very, very severe manner, and because it can get
Of
severe.
course, yeah.
And like it was centered around you know self harm and like suicidal ideation and all that. Like that, those are like the worst case scenarios of what could happen in one's mental health crises. And I dealt with self harm in middle school, and I'm grateful that like I have not like relapsed and or have had anything severe like come out of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that my understanding of what mental health was as comprehensive as it is now. I mean, I think that's obvious
Yeah.
because I don't think mental health is just like doing what you can to not put yourself in those dangerous situations. Like I think it's an everyday thing because like every day you kind of wake up and you gotta like get through
Uh-huh.
things, and
Yeah.
it's not just I don't know. I think whenever I talked about mental health as a middle schooler, it was always like, do I want to die or not? Like, do I want to this or that? Right? It felt very like black or white, but I think when I thought about it like that, like it wasn't practice of like taking care of myself every single day. It wasn't like connecting with the folks around me and like making sure that they're okay and all that. Like it I'm not articulating it the way I want, but it just felt more severe. My understanding and way of taking care of myself now is very different than what it was in middle school.
Of course. In terms of, and you don't have to dive into this, but when you said you had experience with self harm, was it because of the standards that you said that you were like putting yourself up to? I guess what got you to that point?
Yeah, I actually I think that it was a little different for me. I don't think it was so much driven by like my need. Well, maybe it was a little driven by my need for perfection. But I had alluded to this before, but I had a lot of anger issues as a kid. I still have anger issues now. Like I think I had a very abrasive way with dealing with my anger. Cause I think like my dad is like a very loud guy, and like growing up, like it was very like loud. Like whenever you make a mistake, loud, right? It wasn't like a quiet, soothing anger; it was a loud anger. And so like I think I responded in kind for a long time. Like I remember like middle like elementary, middle school, like I at first I was quiet, and then like by the time I got into middle school, I started shouting back. And there was this one time where like I got so mad at my dad, I like physically pushed him and kicked him back, and then ran and locked myself in the room because I was afraid of what he was going to do to me. Um, and it was a very violent outburst, and I think for a long time the way I dealt with my anger was loud as well. And like sometimes I just got so angry that I would like totally just like black out. Like I was just like, I would like shout, I would rage, I would whatever. I would like exhaust all of the energy out of me so that I didn't have to feel that anger anymore. But then some of the times that like manifested in like very harmful like acts, right? And I think by the time I got to high school, I was like, I cannot keep doing this, right? Like, and I don't want to say like my self-harm was not like, I don't think so. What I meant about like, you know, our self-harm, our image of mental health was a one thing. Like I don't want to bring up certain imagery because like I don't think that's conducive, but when we thought of self-harm, we thought about it in one way. But like my way of experiencing pain and anger and frustration, it wasn't reflected in what I saw on the internet, right? It wasn't like, you know, this is the sign of self-harm. Like my idea of self-harm or my experience with it was like if I was like really mad at something, I would be like slamming at like a desk for a long time, and then that like ends up like hurting me a whole bunch. I would do it repeatedly, right? But like that's not what you think about typically when you thought about mental health if you were basing it on the things that you read at that age. Yeah. And so that's kind of, I guess, also answers the previous question about my understanding of mental health as a kid. But oh man, I totally lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay. No.
I fell so far away from our question. No. But I think sometimes my frustration could peak when I did not reach like an expectation I had for myself. But that generally wasn't as common as it was as my anger was when it came to like family things or like relationship, not like relationship like romantic relationships, but like friendship. Because I think those things ended up hurting me the most, and not being perfect as a daughter, sister, or friend was what hurt me more than like my perfection in my school or whatever. And so that was what would bring a lot of anger out in me and lead to like a lot of destructive behaviors.
Yeah, if you could sit down with, you know, if your middle school self was sitting down where I am, I guess what would you say to that young Amanda in terms of either advice or maybe it's just advice?
If I could sit down with middle school Amanda, I would tell her that like she is going to be okay. That right now the way that she is processing her anger is really hurtful to her, but it's also going to be really hurtful to those around her. Because I know that like if I had said it's only going to be hurtful to you, middle school Amanda would not listen, right? But I do think that like my mom had seen me this angry before. My sister had seen me this angry before, and like it hurt them so bad, right? It hurt them so bad to see me have an outburst like that. And I think like being lost in that anger, like I couldn't see that it was hurting other people. And even in my adult life, like I've been angry, not in a violent way. I think I've since shifted how I deal with my anger, but kind of closing that up has also really hurt those around me. And so I would tell Amanda then, Amanda a year ago, and Amanda now that like the way I process my angry feelings or my darker feelings, it also impacts those around me. And like I know at the end of the day, that is what is going to push me to be a better person, because I have such a deep care for those around me. And I should have a deep care for myself too, but we're still working on that. Yes. So getting across to me would mean reminding myself that like I am a person who has a lot of other people who care about me, and I need to make sure that I'm good because I want to make sure that the people around me are good.
Yeah. No, I think it's all beautiful, and I don't know why I'm tearing up, but maybe it's because my inner child needed that. Like you're gonna be good, like you know, it's all gonna be okay. Because I think when I was going through my depression and in high school, when I was just going through that like junior year, when obviously we're trying to be well for like college applications, like I only slept like 3 hours a night because I was so like, you know, staying up late to get perfect on certain projects and stuff. Beside the fact, let's speed up to college. What was it like going to Brown University? And then if you could touch base a little bit on the radio show, because you sent me a few episodes, and honestly, I thought it was very entertaining. Like I loved it. You and your best friend Gabby, shout out Gabby. I haven't met you, but you seem like you'd be really cool too if we meet ever in person. But yeah, talk about a little about that too.
Yeah, Brown is a little question. I don't advertise the fact that I go to Brown. I mostly because I feel like it sets off an impression that I don't think I live up to, nor do I want to live up to it.
Mm,
I Brown is a great opportunity. Like, it getting into a school like that can only ever be explained by, sure, you have effort, but mostly like 80% of the way, 90% of the way is luck, right? And I feel like I was given such an opportunity to go there. And I got to meet a lot of cool people there. I also had a lot of my gripes at that school that I won't go into because that's not what the podcast is about.
yeah, yeah.
But I am cognizant that it opened a lot of doors for me and it introduced me to a lot of cool people. I do think that I think I was my chillest self in college because I do think that in choosing what I wanted to study, in like branching out and like doing different clubs and meeting new people and that, like I was able to breathe a little bit more. I don't think I worked nearly as hard in college as I did in high school because a part of it was because I was really aimless. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do after this, so I'm just gonna like enjoy my 4 years here, enjoy
Yeah.
my classes. But there was an edge. Like I cared about being perfect at what I was doing in school, but it wasn't attached to a goal anymore, right? Because in high school, it's like you do good so you can go to college. But then in college, I was like, I'm doing good for what? I don't know. And so all I did was do good, do the best as I could within my courses, but it was never connected to anything deeper afterwards. Which took off the pressure for myself a little bit. And I didn't end up thinking too much about it because I was like, that's going to be a junior, senior year thing. Junior, senior year hit, we got quarantined, right? And we're like, nothing even matters anymore. So I was just like, well, I'll just figure it out. As for the radio show, I will say that was a really, really fun time. If anyone ever looked into the archives of that radio show, they'd be like, this is not the same person who's talking on the podcast because the way I was speaking, the things that I was saying, the beliefs that I had, I might have them now in a muted sense, but like nowhere close to being the forefront of how I behave and carry myself in my adult life. Um, but it was really great because I think I did sound really confident on that radio show.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was like, damn, she knows what she's saying. She's really knowing what she's talking about.
You know what it was? I'm telling you, it was the dim lighting. We had like vibey lights and like we were like playing music, and I was with my best friend. Like we could just like like shoot the shit, say whatever. Yeah. And like because we like first of all, it wasn't like it was only recorded like only our voices. So I feel like people don't need to see my face. They don't need to know like who's saying this. Yeah. Eventually, some people did know who I was, and I was like, okay, well now I don't want you to come up to me in the morning. I don't want you to ask me questions about what I said last night because what I said last night is like after hours conversations, you guys. Like this is like Sunday morning in the yogurt line. That's inappropriate. But I do think that it made me more confident in my storytelling abilities for sure. It made me more confident as a person, even though I would get shy if someone asked me about it. But it also like I think it made me realize that people care about other people's stories.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think something that I've always loved about literature is that like you get to read about other people's stories. Now I'm not saying anything I said on that podcast had any literary merit, but I think something a bigger generalization that I got from that podcast is that like human interest stories are a thing for a reason. Like
Yeah.
we are invested in what others have to say. Because sometimes I'll just be sharing my stupid little thoughts, and then people are like, "Oh, that was actually really funny," and I'm like, "Really? Was it?"
You're like, oh, stop.
Yeah, no, literally. So it did make me feel really cheery about that, and in a way, it did make me feel a little bit happier about being able to pursue a major that like is invested in stories in some way. And so yeah, that's my like spiel a little bit on Brown and on the radio show. Just because I think I don't even know if like a lot of my like mental health points or like points about growth and development, they were really heavily tied to relationships in college. college.
Which
And
is
you,
fine. That's how you
yeah.
learn, right? That's one way to learn, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I I do think what I can say is I had alluded to the fact that like I cared more about my perfect image as being like the perfect friend, partner, sister earlier. I do think that was something that actually manifested a whole lot in college.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to my therapist about this, my former therapist. Oh, I miss her because I can no longer have her in Massachusetts.
Oh,
But
that's right.
yeah, we were talking about how I think that the level of perfection that I'm dealing with in my adult life is like how I am perceived by others. I'm actually really like again like in the same way that my middle school self was more confident in my writing abilities. I think my college self is more confident in my ability to be perceived by people.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think now I'm just like I don't know if I want to be perceived like that. Um, because I think when I was in college, I prior to even being in a relationship, right? When I got my heart broken freshman year, I was just like, I only want to be perceived as someone who like so nonchalant. And like that's so embarrassing for me to say now because like I'm all about like being like, true to your feelings and like, you know, being that lover girl. Like, it is what it is. But in college, I was like, no, I have to be seen as nonchalant. I have to not care because I have my heart broken. But I also like don't want to be a dick. So like I'm like, I want to be like the cool chill person that everyone like likes to be with, likes to be around, but like doesn't have any like deep real thoughts or emotions except for like with close friends. And so like I think I had a very curated image of who I was in college. And then as a daughter, right, I was like and I'm still close to home, so I want to be like a present daughter, I want to be a present sister, like everyone has to see me like it almost didn't matter if that's a lie, it did matter if I was a good daughter or sister, but I also like wanted people to see it, right? I wanted people to be like, oh, Amanda's a good daughter, Amanda's a good sister, right? And like that got really into my head because
Okay.
like all I should have cared about is being there for my family, but then I also like wanted I wanted to be known for that too, and that's like a really way of viewing like your place in your family. But I think I carried some level of guilt for being a little bit farther away from home, and for being someone who was studying something that like wasn't like typical, right? I
Right.
was like, if I can't fulfill the vision of like classic Asian American person who's studying like pre-med or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
at least I could be there for my family. And so
Yeah.
like, I think I was overcompensating by trying to look a certain way for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think like in terms of friends too, like I like to say that I'm an introvert. I know when I say that everyone's like that is a lie, you have so many friends. I texted my friend this like a couple weeks ago, and she was like, you have more friends than I have ever met in my entire life. And I was like, I understand that. I'm really shy before I get introduced to a person,
Okay.
like have a good thing going.
Yeah.
But I think in college, because that was where I started branching out and finding a lot of friends, it became really, really important to me that people knew that I had friends. Like I had to have like dinner with someone like that this night, or like plans to hang out at like the student center this night or whatever. Like I always had a place to go, and that's like still me now. Yeah. But I care less so that people know about it. But in college, right, I had to have this like packed schedule. I had to be seen as a hyper social person. I had to be seen as a really approachable person. um and like sometimes that's fine, but then sometimes it's like I could be feeling really crappy, I could be feeling like I just want to close the door and like sleep in bed all day, and I would never allow myself to do that because I'm just like, what does that say about how people see you, right? Like people are going to see you as someone who's just like closed off or whatever, and that's not true, right? Like you take a day, you take 2 days, you take a weekend, you take a month, it is whatever. But for me, I was like, I always have to be my best, like socially, professionally, academically, familially. Like it was so heavy to have to carry that all the time. But I think after college and now, like that has been something that I've been like working through and
Mm-hmm.
have been taking strides to get away from.
Yeah, that's so crazy that you put all those like I guess those things that you want to identify or how you want to be perceived in those many areas of your life. It's like so much weight. Like I'm literally, as you saying it, I was like, all right, that's another ton. That's another ton. That's another ton. And you're going up this hill, and I'm like, girl, you're gonna crack at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's take a break, and we'll get right back into it.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about this kind of whole idea of being perceived in college, and I couldn't resonate with that anymore because when I was going through my depression, that was the biggest thing that I had to deal with. Even before that, when I was going through college, so I told you about that ex that I had a crush on for 2 years, and I broke it off before I went to college. I was still hung up on her going into college.
Tough.
Yeah, I know. So I'm not really trying to humble myself here, but like I really was just like innocent kid going into college. Like I'm very respectful to women and like how I approach certain things. I'm not like gonna neg them. I think that's the word to like get them to like me. Like I'm like why would I say mean things if I'd like you, stuff like that. So I was trying to be, I was really close to transferring actually to UConn because I was just like, I want to go back to that familiarity. And I want people to know me as that guy that was like, in high school, I was like president of my class for all like 4 years. So like, and I live in a small town, so everyone knew who each other was. So I wanted to be in that environment. And as you know, with UMass Amherst, it's such a big school and stuff like that. And I didn't really establish myself. So that's why I wanted to transfer. So I didn't really know this kind of like perception that I want people to see me as. I mean, at the end of the day, I always want to perceive that the nice guy. But at that time, like, I made a mistake and I own up to it. And, but then other people started to get in terms of like the perception of who I was because of the thing that I did, which for my own sake, like respectfully now, I won't really say what that is. I can tell you off camera. But for me, like it felt like everyone was against me because I feel like they pictured me as such a bad person and a through therapy, I realized it's not such a bad thing at all. I just felt like, just like a lot of people accusing me of stuff and all that stuff, and the perception of myself wasn't that nice guy anymore. It was taking what I thought like the nice guy who I was, and then how people, the monster, putting that together, and then like I was like, I don't know who I am. So that monster part really just like absorbed who I really thought I was. So I was like, oh well, I'm a pretty fucked up dude. So like I'm like this is who I am, and that's all I thought I was. And then from that point on, the perception just carried on that I was a bad person. So obviously, with any college kid, I was trying to deal with my problems through like drinking and all that stuff. And through that, obviously, your emotions are heightened. And at that time, obviously, I was feeling sad about how people were perceiving me. And I was like at a party, and then I was trying to drink my sorrows away. But then I was like, I don't know, I just need to sit down. And then I don't know. I think it was a higher power or God or something that told me to sit down instead of to keep like basically put myself into alcohol poisoning. Yeah. But I just like I like literally sat there and I was like, I should kill myself. Yeah. I was like, I think it's better off for everyone that I do that. And luckily, like I had a friend next to me that was like, what's going on and stuff like that. And then I just had an outburst. I was like, this life is better. Like everyone's better off without me. Like my family, blah blah. I just like started crying. Like, and this is at a frat party too. So it's just like, what the is going on, right? Everyone's like, oh my god, like what is happening? And it was because of what. And granted, like, it's different, right? I love this quote from Jay Shetty. He said, it's, I can't repeat it, but basically the whole concept is like, like how you think of me is what I think I am. So like if you think I am a good person, then I will believe that I am a good person. But because everyone was in that negative, like, oh, you're annoying, you're a burden, blah blah blah, that hurt me to my core because I was like, no, I know that's not the person that I am. So basically I was like, oh, like, everyone's better off without me. I should kill myself and stuff like that. And obviously, luckily, my friends have like prevented me from like doing anything. Honestly, I don't know what I would have used at that time, but I know the perception, I cared so deeply about how other people thought of me. And I mean, just like being like president and being in a small town, like I was just like the nice guy, like the like student athlete and stuff like that. So it was all good things. But to be in a situation where you felt like you were just doing what you needed or what was best at the time.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that your friend is there to like intervene. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
really scary, and like
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you're. It sounds like you're farther away from that place,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
for sure.
great.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it just really speaks to the dangers of like our self perceptions, right? Because it's like we know the concept of identity, like we talk about it all the time, like growing up, right? Who we are, what we are, and etc. But I do think that it has to become an active practice where we're just like, if you want to be someone, if you have an idea of who you are, like just be that person, but you don't need to spend your life polishing up who that person is to the rest of the world, right? Because um like you said with your image of like I was always like the nice friendly guy, and then like I did this one thing, and then like I let that image and what everyone else said about me be like the thing that like I guess destroys that image, and like
Mm-hmm.
it becomes the new image that you adopt. Like when we spend so long and so much time fabricating that image for us, and that's not actually, I don't want to say it's not actually who we are, but if we spend so much time polishing it as opposed to just like living it and just being it, right? Like it's like the tiniest thing can make it all fall apart,
Yeah.
right? But if we live our lives the way we want to live our lives, and like carry ourselves the way we want to carry ourselves, like at some point, like it stops becoming an image we're trying to live up to, and it becomes an image that we are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's something that I'm trying to do in my own life, right? Because of course I still want to be seen as like a very, really friendly, kind, and warm-hearted person,
Mm-hmm.
but like I can't keep thinking in my head like, oh, like should I like do this for this person, should I say this to this person, should I reach out to them, like I can't keep spending my time overthinking like what a person would feel about me if I do something. Like if I like care about a person, I should just like act on those whims and like do those things for them, right? And instead of spending those times calculating my actions. And I think that's the difference between like building up an image and actually living it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think in a like life changing way, it's easier for you to like rebuild yourself and like create a new image of who you are, and who you want to be when you don't have such a tight like hold, a tight grasp on like these people, right? Because if I starting my adult life holding on to the way I wanted to be perceived in college and stuff, I don't think I would have been able to take some time to figure out what I want and need, and what I want to, who I want to be in this stage of my life. Because I had gone through a like really really big change recently,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think like oh man, I lost my train of thought. But I was gonna say like not having this vice grip, like when you have this vice grip on who you want to be, right? Any thought of like maybe changing who you want to be kind of feels threatening, even if it's self-imposed,
Yeah.
right? So for example, if I was like the nonchalant person, I just only ever wanted to be seen as nonchalant and chill and cool. If I held on to it so tightly, I don't think now I would have been able to be like, actually no, I actually am really soft and tender and like really want like people to be sentimental and stuff. Like um because then it would feel like damaging to the reputation I
Yeah.
built
Yep.
on myself. Um, and I think it's funny now because I was saying like I feel like I joked and acted in a way when I, in high school and a little bit in college, when I was like back home visiting friends and stuff, to the point where I was like now like sometimes I almost feel like there's an image or a perception of me that like I no longer correlate to or like correspond to here, because I think again I carried myself in such a like harsh way, and I was like my humor was really brusque, and I was like a little bit meaner, and that's how I showed my love. I'm like I'm not trying to show my love that way anymore. And so like now people will like say something and I'll be like, oh, I don't know, that's kind of mean, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to say that, like that's crazy. But I think that would have like confused me so much by like having this idea. Right? And so I think there's something. I wanted to quote something because oh my god, I just needed to be the person who quotes something like this. No,
We're
I'm
both at
kidding.
quoting this
No, no,
episode.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to quote something, but I don't know if it's like entirely relevant. Um, because it almost sounds like a bad thing. But I was reading Homegoing by Yag Yassi because I was actually tutoring some kid with it. But there is a really good quote there where the whole book is about the idea of like storytelling and like preserving one's history, but also and like carrying out one's history, but also not allowing your history to exist without letting it swallow you whole. But it talks about it in the sense of like because it follows a two family lines that started in Africa, and it's a history that's marred by slavery and intertribal violence. Um, but there, it talks a lot about like running it, like you run the risk of losing yourself or totally like giving away who you want to be if you like let yourself just be completely subsumed by your history without trying to live out your own life. And so there was a quote there where like someone was like, if you tell, this is coming from a person who was trying to make a new life for himself, and he was like, this is taking place in like the 1800s, and his parents or his mother was not a free woman, but he lived his life out, even though he was technically not a free man. He like on paper would have been an enslaved man, but he like escaped and like he just like lived his life out as a free person. It was like if you tell yourself a lie enough times, it becomes the truth, right? So for him, he would just tell people like, "I'm a free man. I have my papers. I have my papers. I have my papers." Of course, that has a bigger significance than like what we're talking about now. Right. But I do think this idea of like, if you feel like you're not happy with who you are, if you feel like the life you set out for yourself, the reputation, the image you set out for yourself, no longer corresponds to who you are because you are a growing person at any given time. And it feels almost unnatural to say, like, actually, this is not who I am. I want to be this type of person. Like, it might feel like a lie now, but like, you keep living your life the way that you want to live your life, act the way you want to act, be who you want to be. And eventually, like, that is going to be who you are, right? You don't have to have such a tight grasp on a certain image or reputation that you have for yourself. And that's something that I've been really trying to adopt in my own life.
Yeah, I feel like that's been the main thing about being in our 20s. It's just like you don't have to be this, like you said, hang on tight to this certain identity. And like I felt like that was what I was doing. I was just hanging on such a tight identity that there was no room for me to like change and be malleable. Like I think at that time, because of what I did, I was trying to be like in my boy era, but I came to soon realize that like that's something that I didn't like and didn't want to do. Not because of the repercussions of it, but because like I don't know, I was trying to explore something, but because I was exploring something, I feel like I got flagged for it. But now, as an adult, like I'm super big on intention and just being like building the life that I want and living. And I definitely is I'm definitely so much better on like on being like what my identity is, and that it doesn't have to be this one thing. It could be many things. It could be many things in like a different parts of your life because of certain events, and that's just something I didn't understand as a young, I guess in a young brain, because I felt like, oh, like you're Randy, this is who you are, this is who you need to stick by. But in reality, like the time that we have now is just exploring who we are. And today I could be, I don't know, you know, I want to be a rapper, and then tomorrow, like I want to like surf or something, whatever. Like it's malleable, and that's the point. Like I feel like it's so like self perception in our mind is just so powerful because it really not identifies, but really shapes the tunnel vision of how we act and what we do. And if that gets disrupted or something like that, then like you said, it literally made me fall into depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like this kind of goes full circle. I feel like I know this is not every kid's experience, but like when you are a kid, you can feel like every single day you can be like, I want to be a doctor this day, I want to be a firefighter this day, I want to be an astronaut this day, right? Like you're given that flexibility to like change all the time because it's what people expect of you.
Yeah.
And I just want a world where we can expect that of anyone at any age, right? Where like people do change every single day, and we need to give them like the grace and the empathy to do that.
Yeah.
Not only the world around us, but also like like us ourselves, right? Because you're right? Like, when the visions that we have for ourselves don't align with like our reality or what we actually want, it puts us one into an identity crisis, but it also can make you fall into like a really deep depression,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't feel great to wake up some days and like not be who you want to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I was answering this question of like, who am I? And it's like crazy because I don't think I'll ever like answer that question for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, I know that like, I want to be like like, a great partner, a great father, like all those things. I know I aspire to be, and that's fine. But in terms of these other things, like, I remember in high school, like, one of my friends was like, "Oh, like you've changed," and I'm like, at first I was like, really? Like how? But now I'm thinking about it, I was like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing?
Right,
Like, I'm supposed to be
exactly.
doing that like every single day. Like, some
Yeah.
days I could be tired and having a challenge, and other days I could be super happy and stuff like that. But that person was just like, had this such tight grasp of perception of who I was, and didn't allow me to like, get outside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pointed comment. I like, even just hearing it now, like you changed like that, like it that makes me feel some type of
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a tough comment. But yeah, so like, I mean, I guess my advice to the world is like, let the people around you change. Let
Yeah.
them blossom, or like hopefully blossom. Let's hope it's
Yeah.
not a bad
Yeah,
change.
yeah, of course, of course. So let's speed up to now. Like, how's your current mental health? What are you working on?
Oh, I feel like this is a big question about my mental health in recent days. And I don't want to turn this into like a political podcast because I know that's not what it is. But I do think that every single day that we exist in our adult lives is inherently political, with
Mm-hmm.
our actions. Um, I think my mental health has been, yeah, I'm working on it. I did have a big change in that, I spent 7 years kind of like being with like, my friends, roommates and whatever, and so I was a fairly independent adult, being able to do what I wanted to do. And I moved home for family reasons to be closer to my mom, and my grandfather is getting older. Um, and so I've been like living at home, and it's been strange.
Mm-hmm.
I think I took the leap earlier than everyone else that grew up with, where I moved out first. But now I'm back, and now everyone's moved out, and I'm like, oh, shit, like I did it backwards, and that's what kind of where the perception kind of like can stress me out too, right? Where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, it looked great when I was the first one to move out, but now it looks bad, right? But I need to be like, who
Who cares?
cares?
Yeah.
Like in this economy,
No, seriously, who
like who
cares?
cares? um, so there's that. On a deeper sense, I know I mentioned the fact that I'm queer, but I didn't talk about it as much, which I'm surprised about because that's usually all I can talk about, honestly. It's been tough because I'm not out to my parents. At this point, my mom has to know. Homie's just not
Okay.
saying anything. Like, she literally looked at me and she's just like, she's looking at my like work benefits and she's like, oh, they have paid parental leave, like 14 weeks. That's pretty good. And I'm like, I'm not gonna have a kid anytime soon. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
And she was just like, people who adopt can also take this benefit. And I'm like, you might as well have just
Just
called
say
me,
it.
just straight up call me a lesbian. Like,
Yeah,
I don't even know
yeah,
what you want to say here.
yeah.
Um, but jokes aside, it's been a little bit tough because I think, um, something that uh, is very clear to a lot of folks in the queer community, but I don't know if it's as clear to folks outside, is that like I think being queer in any sense of the word is beyond like who you date and who you like, have relationships with, because it's a way you carry yourself as well. And I think there are a lot of ways that I've like dimmed my queerness in being at home,
Okay.
right? Like, whether that be my political views or like my ability to like joke about gay shit or like whatever, like it's a bit quieter at home just because I you know
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
conversation can come, somewhere else, and so it's been tough. That's also why I've been trying to like reach out and like find more queer friends around the city, which I will say I am really proud of myself because I should start saying more positive things about myself. I am proud that I've like put like feelers out there, right? Like I really could have just sunken into like just staying with a familiar friend group because I do love my friends here.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been pushing myself to, be a little bit more social in that way.
Yeah.
And like going to a book club where I know nobody, like just doing all these things. And it's been really lovely. And I've been really grateful for the people I've met. So, in that part, like I'm working on it and it feels okay. Work wise, my current issue and like the issue that I left my therapist and I had left on was that I am a chronic workaholic.
Okay.
And so as a teacher, first of all, teachers are like underpaid, overworked, and
I agree.
it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
But the very nature of the job was that like I wake up at 6:15, I'm working until like the bell ends at like 3:45, but I'm working until like 9, 10, 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of the job, if you want to do it with diligence, calls for that, but like no one should do it. Like a dead, if there are any teachers out there, like you cannot do that. But like that's what I was doing, and because of that, and because of, again, I'm already type A, I'm already a perfectionist. Like now that I have a regular 9 to 5 job, I can't, like after 5 o'clock, I don't know what to do with myself. So I continue to work. I tutor. I like edit essays. I like do some more work. And I'm just like, it's almost like it doesn't feel pleasant, but it almost like soothes my anxiety of like having all this empty time.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm trying to work through. But I also know that's like it's hard. It's hard to like kind of like just like let go.
Yeah.
And I think like going back to what I said about like things that I want out of my life and like what I want to do, I think falling into like the rhythm of work stops me from having to figure out what it is that I want to do with my free time, what I want to do, as a person, to be a full person outside of being a worker.
Yeah.
And it's so bleak because like you think you have free time, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, dang, I don't even know how to relax, right? I don't know if I like, what passions I want to pursue. And I think having that time and being and confronting that, it forces you to really try new things. And this is again a time for you to fail, right? I'm grateful that I recently met a friend who is into typography and design, and they were like, if you ever want to like bring out your old stuff or like work on something new, I could design it into like a little like a mini book or a zine, like low pressure, and we put it out like as a community thing. And like we had dinner yesterday, and they were like, here's this deadline. I think we should just do bi-weekly things. And like you have always been a good student, so here I'll give you these deadlines, right? Work on something, and then like it doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be bad. It could just be whatever. Like you can just do whatever, and it's a start, right? And so like I've been really happy that I'm branching out and finding people who are able to like help me with that, which has been really great. What else about my mental health now? There definitely was a big point that I'm like totally glazing over, and I don't.
Let's wait for your mind to catch up right now.
I know, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think there is I think to what I talked about, like again, I'm not going to talk about the election because I've fucking pissed. But I do think that a big part of who I've always been and who I'm wanting to be now, because I didn't have a chance to be as centered in my community as a teacher just because I was like so busy doing other things. I mean, inherently I think the job was community focused, right? But I wasn't able to like volunteer or do other things outside of my work because like my work was so involved,
right?
But I think right now, like in a point where there's like a lot of despair and there's a lot of sadness, and honestly there's a lot of anger on like the internet. Like I'm trying to stay away from it because I disagree with a lot of views out there, because there's a lot of blame being put on individuals, and I'm just like, there's a lot of hurt in this world. And like as a teacher who experienced that secondhand trauma, and also as a person who's just surrounded by people who are saying really horrible things, like you might feel like you can say that on social media, but that actually gets to people. And then like all this conflict and this discourse is not good for anyone if it's not gonna lead to any material change, right? But seeing it all the time, it makes you feel really, really bad. And so like I've been trying to be more involved with like the Quincy community, the Boston community in a very like productive way, right? Like I have plans. I want to like start tutoring like ESL soon to like adults around here. I want to be more mindful of the folks that I see who are like struggling out on the streets, and like winter is getting cold, and I want to like start like helping out and like just like giving them what change I have, or like acknowledging them and just being kind. Like I think right now there's a lot of like violence and like pain in the world, and like the only way we are going to get through this is not on relying on like, you know, these bigger things here. Like sometimes the most you can do is like take care of the people around you, right? Whether it's like strangers around you, friends, family, like you kind of have to involve them and care for them. And like that's my way of like trying to center myself as a person, but also feel better about the state of the world, right? Because you can only do things around your local community right now. And so like that's also been on the forefront of my mind
Yeah.
in recent days.
I mean, we need more people like you in the world to kind of make that impact on society and really just spread that kindness. I agree with you. There's so much hurt, there's so much pain, and there's people out there that just add to it, and it doesn't make any sense. Like I feel like it takes a lot more energy to put negative things out there versus like being positive, because I feel like that's how we start out, but because of certain events, that's what makes us put the negative out there. I do want to touch base on like on being queer in Asian, and how like that kind of has affected your mental health, and you know developing that at a young age, and how you like tell your friends and stuff like that, because I feel like a lot of people struggle with that, especially from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah. Thank you for this question. I think this is a really good question. I, oh my gosh. I mean, it was, and it is tough. I think, for a long time, like, I feel like I always knew that I was like closer to my female friends, and I was like, that's normal, right? Because like I'm close to my female friends, like that's fine. Like you girls hung like in elementary school, right? Yeah. It was like girls hung out with girls, guys hung out with guys, and it was like whatever. By the time I got to middle school, I'm just like girls and guys started pairing up, and I'm like, damn, did I miss the memo? Because like why are we not all hanging out with, like, what happened to like the gender self segregation? Like why are we all mixing all of a sudden? Like what the um and so it was a really, I kind of always knew in the back of my head that I was queer. But I think I didn't let myself acknowledge that like I could be queer until like eighth grade maybe. Okay. Because it was scary, right? Because I was just like, I remember like the thought literally was like, okay, so I was I feel even bad for mentioning this. I was dating Waylon at the time.
Okay.
And oh
Wayland's
God,
like a high school
love
friend.
Wayland. My bad, touch the mic. But I was dating Wayland at the time, and I remember I was just like in my thought, like it was an intrusive thought almost. It was like, what if you're gay? And I was just like,
No, no, no. Put it away.
no.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, no, I'm dating Waylon. It's fine. And but the moment I had those thoughts, floodgates. Like it was like every day. Like I did the whole like, how do you know I'm gay? Like gay quiz. Like, dude, it was so, and I don't know why I had enough internet literacy to know that that was not going to tell me if I was gay or
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
But I was looking up all these resources. I was like, I don't know. Yeah. Because it's big. Like I do think that now when you understand it or when you feel it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm queer, right? I'm not to say that it's hard or not hard, but I think it's different. Even though it's only been like about like 7-8 years, that cannot be true. How 10 years and over a decade? It's even though it's been like a decade. I do think it's different now to be a young person growing up and be like, oh, I'm queer, right? But I think at that time I was just like, I was the only queer person that I knew of, the queer Asian person in high school. And so I was just like, I cannot be the only one.
Yeah.
But, that just made it so much harder to really come to
Right.
terms with it. Right. But then once I did, I was just like, nope, this checks out. This makes sense. Like, it makes sense. So I never felt this way about any one of my guy friends. And it felt really good to be able to understand that. But it was still so scary to, like, figure out what that would mean for the rest of my life, right? Because like there's a reason why I haven't told my mom, right? There's also like,
Yeah.
this is also, it's tough because my grandfather's old, but he's very traditional, and like I feel like a lot of people don't understand when I say this. A lot of people who maybe don't grow up in an Asian family like this, I don't think I will ever be able to come out while my grandfather is still with us. And I say that because there is like, he has very traditional beliefs. And like I don't want to sound dramatic when I say this, but I do think it would upset him a lot, to that it would cause him complications if I ever came out. Like I won't even lie, and I'm not trying to be like absurd, but I think it's a possibility, right? And so like this is something that I feel like I'm carrying with me. And I'm like, there's so many moments when I want to like say to my mom, because like my mom and I are super tight, and I'm just like, we are only ever going to be like 60%, 70% of the way there
Yeah.
if you don't know this side of me. And so every day it's hard to talk to my mom because I'm just like, oh, I want to tell you about this, I want to say this. But it's also hard holding the thought that there's a possibility that like she won't take it well, right? Because that would be damaging one of the most like precious relationships I have in my life.
Yeah.
And so it's really, 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 really hard to reckon with every single day, right? It's on my mind all the time.
Yeah.
It comes up in conversation fairly often,
Right.
and so I I think the only thing that is okay that helps me be okay with this is that I know I'm not blaming myself for any of it,
Yeah.
right? Because I think there's a lot of my struggles with mental health in the past have been because I blame myself for something, or I was carrying guilt about something. I don't feel guilty about being gay, and I don't blame myself for being gay. I quite love it, actually.
Yeah.
It's more so that I'm afraid that it's going to hurt those around me, right? And I know that it's not inherent, like it's not wrong. Like I'm not wrong for being who I am. But I also know that like it could hurt those around me, and that's something that I do. Some people would say like, just be who you are, and it is what it is. And if they are hurt by it, that's on them. And I agree that that can be the reality, but also that's not immediately my reality. You know what I mean? Like I do care if I hurt my mom. I do care if I do hurt my grandfather. At least like for right now, right? Like, I think I don't know what I'm waiting for, what time I'm waiting for, but it's not. It hasn't.
It's not the
yet.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing your story on that, and I feel like it's very courageous and strength of you to even share that in your perspective. We're actually gonna take a quick break and get into more of that.
Cool.
So how have you been navigating with that struggle, and if someone came up to you about how to also navigate being queer, especially in the Asian community, what advice would you give to them?
I in terms of how I've been navigating it outside of my family, it's I being queer and being Asian has been amazing. I think it's really beautiful, especially when you tap into your own queer community and you find other queer folks. They don't have to be Asian, but if they are, even better. Like, love it, love our Gaysians. Um,
Nice.
but I it's been really wonderful having had the 7 years to be away from home, because I got to learn how to be a queer adult, right? Like I think like in college it's one thing when you're like, oh, okay, being queer means I get to date people of the same sex and like whatever, I can go to queer parties and whatever. But I think like as an adult, a lot of the times it's like being there for your friends also when they also are having these struggles and these conversations, and like meeting other people who have similar experiences and who can understand you without even having to say it or talk about it, right? Like I something like, this is a small example, but like growing up, like I was really close to one of my high school teachers, and she was like, you're gonna have to come out one day. And like it was like almost like a fact, and like, and I don't, and I'm not saying it with any malice, right? But she like said it in an encouraging way of like, you can't, like, you have to be true to your life, right? But being able as an adult to find other queer friends to like who don't have that assumption, who are just like, no, like it is a complicated topic, and like you address it the way that you need to address it as you grow, right? They don't even have to say that, right? But it's almost like the understanding that comes with being queer. Like it's really comforting to find other folks who you don't have to explain yourself to, and that's been really, really great. I also feel like it's always fun, and it's always really heartening to like find media that like reflects that, right? I think I always, always, always talk about my favorite movie of all time. It's called Saving Face. It's like 2004, 2005. Will Smith was a producer on it, but there is a like Chinese, like a gay Chinese lead in it. And I was like, for its time for that movie to exist is kind of wild to me. Alice Wu, the director, the writer of that movie. Oh my God, my hero, honestly. But it's really beautiful to see people have these experiences and then be brave enough to share them, right? Because then it really, at that intersection, it really is heartening to know that you're not alone, right? And it could be from this movie from 2004, 2005, and it could be from like meeting a new friend who shares those same experiences. I feel like because I grew up in a high school where I didn't see other queer Asians, being able to discover them and discover like content media that reflects that,
Yeah.
it truly feels like you're learning that you're not alone at an older age, right? Because a lot of kids have that experience at a younger age, right? Whether whatever identities they hold, they might be like, oh, maybe I really am not alone when I see this, but then seeing it as an adult is a whole other thing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like talking about healing your inner child, you're healing your inner adult at this
Yeah,
point, and
yeah, yeah.
it's really great. Um, and to the point about how I would like what I would talk to people who are dealing with holding a queer identity while also being Asian. Um, you know what? The best thing I can say is like, congratulations. This is a really wonderful intersection to be at.
Mm.
Um, and you got to do what makes you happy, right? And you got to be with the people who make you happy. And if right now that doesn't mean being with a partner that makes you happy, be with other people who hold your identities and who see you as you are, because you are going to feel so much better when the people you surround yourself by um, look like you, talk like you, like share those same experiences like you. And I don't mean like look like actual appearance
Yeah,
wise,
yeah,
just
yeah.
like who share those worldviews with you. Because I think it can be very isolating when you don't have that, right? And um, the biggest, my like, my moments where I felt the most supported were not always from like what happens at a legal level in this world when it comes to like queer rights and stuff. I'm sure that's great, but like it always has come from those immediately around me,
Mm.
right? Like whether I'm dealing with a heartbreak and my friend is letting me crash on the couch for like 4 weeks and like letting me spew some BS about how the person that I was in love with was the love of my life, even though I only knew them for like X months. Like whether it's like that or just like being there for me when like my family might have said something really homophobic and I was really like in pain. Like it's always been the people immediately around me, and so that's what I would my advice for other queer Asians to
Mm-hmm.
be like, find other people who have the same experiences and who can you know be there for you. Hit
Yeah.
me up because I'm a queer Asian and I'm looking for more queer friends.
There we
That's
go.
all.
There we
There we
go.
go.
And back to being home and kind of starting a new, not starting a new community, but building a new community.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, I think I'm so glad that you have a community that you feel you can reside with and be around and feel comfortable in. Honestly, at the end of the day, no matter what your sexuality, your skin, your race, whatever it is, that's all us as human beings is trying to do.
Yeah.
Like we all want to be part of a tribe, be part of a community, because when we that's like just a, I don't know, Homo sapien psychological thing. Like that's what how we were from the beginning of time. And when we don't have that, like you said, like you feel like you're alone, and then that's what leads to like those tough mental health struggles or struggles in life in general.
Yeah. I just thought of one other thing because I feel like what I said is it's solid, but I think something that's a little bit more tangible, especially if you are a queer Asian person who lives in the greater Boston area. Something that has helped me find queer friends is well, I'm not a sponsor of Bumble BFF, but I have to say for some reason a lot of queer people are on Bumble BFF, so that is actually a really solid way to find friends
Okay, there you
for
go.
a queer person. But I also think like a lot of the times there are folks who are volunteering in the area who a lot like it's the Chinatown community has a lot of like queer volunteers, which I
Mm,
like am surprised about, which is really nice.
mm-hmm.
But also I don't know if you've ever been to Pan Pop or Pour Overs. That was just like it's like on I don't even know the street names. It's right by Montclair, right? But it's like a community cafe, but like very queer friendly, and I think like just like hanging out around it, like just as a tangible place to where to start, like volunteering there, like finding folks around there, like I don't know, that's like the first spot I ever stepped in Quincy where I was like, I feel like I can be 100% gay here, and like no one would bat an eye. Um, so just tangible things for people in this area. If you're from anywhere else, I'm sorry. I have no advice for you.
It's all right. Thank you for those resources. Appreciate it. Now, I know we haven't touched on one thing, which is your teacher experience. Let's dive into like how that experience was and how that has, obviously that's pretty recent. So how that has shaped you to the person that you are now, and even just like, because I know I feel like we talked about like how that affected you mentally wise. So talking about that as well.
Yeah, I teaching. I could talk about this for. I could create like a 30 season long podcast from my 3 years of teaching alone. Teaching is really difficult. Like I won't even lie. I taught in Baltimore City, and like when I tell you those kids have so much love to give, but it's also such a difficult place to grow up, and it is a difficult place to learn, because these students are dealing with so many inequities and so many injustices, like in front of their very eyes, right? Like they like grew up hearing and knowing, and like some of them even seeing like what happened to Freddie Gray, right? Like all this violence around them. Like you cannot grow up in an environment like that without having it like traumatize you, right? And um, I was lucky enough to be able to like teach some of these students and like hopefully be a positive role model in their life and support in their life. And I'm quite sad that I wasn't able to finish off like all my years there, because there are so many students that like they say like sometimes you just have one teacher that will affect you forever. I can recall so many students that have like changed who I am as a person, and it makes me really sad that I can no longer be in the vicinity where like where that work was being done. But passion and like and values aside, like that job was so difficult for me. Like I already alluded to the fact that I was working like 14, 15-hour days, which teaching or not, like that's horrible for anyone, right?
Right.
And I think it quite literally altered my brain chemistry, where like now I don't know what to do if I'm not working, which is what I had mentioned. But it's also tough because we are in. Everyone loves talking about education. Here's my other beef with social media. I think like aside from people sharing political views on social media, um, they also share a lot of like like a lot of people who like don't have anything to do about in the world of education have a lot of thoughts to say, right? Like we're in a national teacher shortage. They're like our state of our education is like in crisis, right? But the blame is always put on students and teachers, right? They're always like these students are like they can't do anything anymore. They all they do is like go on their phones, which is true, and I have my gripes with that. But also like I don't know how I can tell you that these are like signs of a larger issue, and people have not been paying attention to it, and now like this is the reckoning, right? Like there's a reason why these kids are all on their phones and iPads all the time, because their parents might have to be working like 3-4 jobs. They can't always be there to take care of their kids. Why do they have to work so many jobs? Because they can't afford anything. So like you see these small issues are part of larger issues, but people love to talk about things like they're experts on them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like it's really frustrating as a teacher to see that and to be like, I actually want to like tell you you're wrong, but also like that's not going to do anything. Right. Because like the most I can do is like dedicate myself to like teaching kids, tutoring kids, doing whatever, and I just need to like block out whatever like people are talking about, because and then people don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But then there's also a lot of blame on teachers, right? Like right now, like teachers are like pushing for like parents to be. I'm not saying all parents aren't engaged, but they're pushing for parents to be more engaged, to be supportive of teachers. They're also pushing. There's almost like a level of, I think growing up in like a technological age, and like with social media being so big, like there's almost a level of like unseriousness that we approach like teaching with, right? Like like we've seen like movies like Bad Teacher or whatever, like you know what I mean? It's like teaching has become almost like like a storyline in and of itself, right? Like a stereotype in and of itself. And you kind of like, you're like, oh, there's the boring teacher, there's the mean teacher, there's the whatever teacher. And I'm like, teachers are just people at the end of the day, and they're trying to get their jobs done. They're trying to help your kids. But like, you see teachers, because maybe you had a bad experience with a teacher. Like that affects things too. But then like now every single teacher is your enemy, and like you don't support teachers. You think they're stupid. You think that they are not like, professionals who are attempting to do a good thing, and it really becomes tough. And so as a teacher, I was like up against that. I was up against like a lot of the hurt and the anger that the kids felt on the daily, and like whatever they ended up saying to me, and like that eventually like really builds up, right? Because like I'm having a hard time at work. I go home, if I go on social media, I'm having a hard time with social media, and like it's just like it's endless, right? And it's like for 24/7, like you feel attacked, and like it doesn't feel good. And I'm talking to some of my teacher friends now, and they're just like, this year has been especially tough, right? Because like teachers are leaving, kids are hurting. Like every day you wake up, and sometimes your silver lining is that a kid says something wonderful to you, but you can't rely on a kid to right? That's also not their job. Their job is to go there and learn. And so for 3 years of constantly just doing that, I mean, I had summers off, but it doesn't even matter. Summer comes by in like a blink of an eye. It definitely did damage to my mental health. And like I have enough foresight to say that I'm so proud of the work I did, and I love so many of my students, and also that job and that position and the way I carried out the position did maybe irreparable damage to my mental health. Not to say that like I'm totally ruined and will be depressed forever, but I'm trying to unlearn how like my workaholic tendencies, but I'm also trying to stop being so nihilistic, right? Like I think when you're in it, every single day is like doom and gloom and everything sucks, right? And even now I kind of still feel like that, and it's really unfortunate that I have this level of nihilism, because I want to do good in the world, but it's really hard to do good in the world when you feel like you're fighting an uphill battle. But I also, what I will say is that that job has taught me so much about why I want to continue being kind in my life. I think the easiest people to shit on in this world, like easiest group of people, kids. Because like, right, like, as an adult, you can just be like, oh, I was a kid, I get to say this, right? Because like I used to go through it. But no, it's not the same. Like, you think that those kids aren't hearing what we say about them? Like that hurts them too, right? And like putting that on their mental health only makes them act like worse, right? And so I think like that job, as much as it took out of me, it also taught me to be a deeply empathetic and a deeply patient person. Because our kids, and like particularly in Baltimore, our Black students are going to be our most vulnerable group of students at the end of like vulnerable group of people, period. Right? Because these are kids who are facing so many people against them, and like that just like really taught me that like you got to be there for them, right, at the end of the day. And but it also, in my time now with like a normal 9 to 5, it also taught me that like I need to be able to take care of myself before I can ever like do anything to really help students again. So I am waiting. The reason why I'm not teaching right now is because I'm waiting for my license to be transferred. So like Maryland, like get on that. What the heck? I will literally pay the processing fee. Just give me my license. But this time, the normal job has given me a lot of time to relax and think, and I still hear from my students now, and it makes me so much more confident knowing that this is what I want to dedicate my life to like making sure kids feel like heard and seen. Like one of my friends teaches one of my former 8th graders, and he texted me today about what she was saying, and he was like, so and so said that you are so much more passionate than I am, and said that you prepared her so well for school, and that like she loves you and she misses you. And like to hear that, like, and to know that like even if it's just the one kid, right, that like is enough to like make you feel like, oh, like I'm doing something that really matters. And so like in terms of mental health, I feel like I gave you a whole lot, but like it like tore apart my mental health, but it also maybe in a different way, with a different work-life balance, it also taught me like this is what I care about in my life, and this is what we all should care about, right? We should care about kids.
Yeah.
Like if you're a teacher on Fridays, you get to say "F them kids," but like no other time, no other time should you ever say "F them kids," because we need to take care of those kids.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are doing probably one of the hardest things, which is building the future of the society, right? And like you have to endure that. You have to deal with parents that either are helicopter parents or like parents that maybe don't give a about their kids, and then therefore like they're coming with their struggles to your own. And I mean, what you're doing and all the stories that you just shared, I was like, wow, like it's just very impactful what you're doing. And like you said, like before, like teachers are being underpaid for what they do because they really are building our society for the future. And that's what we need to think about, not what's happening like in the now, or well, I mean, maybe that, yes, it's still in the now, but and I'm sorry that you had to go through that to, I guess, kind of realize that. But I guess life is funny in that way, going through the struggle to figure out um, a new passion of yours.
I mean, I think my time teaching has hardened me, but it's hardened me exterior, like on the exterior, right? Like you can curse me out now, and I'll be like, all right,
Cool.
whatever.
Yeah.
But on the inside, I think it's softened me to like what we need in this world, and it's not any more hardline approaches to like discipline or whatever. We need to love on these kids, right? And we need to love on this world, because I mean it's a shit world out there right now. I don't want to go too deeply on this point because I don't want to go on. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but um, something that's interesting that I hope people start thinking about is also because we are talking about mental health, right? Young boys' mental health. It's as a teacher, that is something that I did not know how to deal with, and that is something that is so important because something I saw so much of in my students was, you know who Andrew Tate is?
Yes.
A lot of young boys, like a lot of them, like see him and they're like, "Oh my god, he's my idol." And it's easy to be like, "You're a dumb kid, and why would you listen to that?" But that's like from the point of view of an adult, right? Like if you think about being a kid and going on your little YouTube rabbit holes and then
Yeah.
like falling into these circles, like it's not hard to accidentally fall into that rabbit hole. And if we're talking about like men's mental health, and I know people are always like, oh, men's mental health, like they don't look out for each other. Start with the kids, right? Because like I am not experienced enough to know how we work with like men who are older and their mental health and like how we help them get through to like where they want to be.
Yeah.
But like with kids, like you got to get them while they're young before they end up like falling for and listening to these people with these horrible thoughts and these beliefs because they are purporting to support men and like how they should end up becoming men.
Yeah.
Right. But um, if you've ever worked with like 13, 14-year olds and you really like you get them outside of their friend group, right? But if you get them one-on-one and you're just like, why the f- do you listen to this idiot of a man?
Yeah.
Right. But like with much more compassion.
Right.
You'd be surprised at how compassionate they can respond to you. I had kids who were just like, with their friends, they're like, oh, like he teaches me how to make money, how to get girls, da da da, da, which like makes you want to be like, F you, like
Yeah.
I hate you as a kid. But you get them one-on-one and they're just like, I don't have a reliable male figure in my life, and this man like cares about me because like the whole world is against me, and like this man knows that and he's telling me how to get out of it. And like even though the kid might be wrong, like it's coming from a genuine place of hurt and like and being misguided. So like at the end of the day, like what I want for the world is I want people to be more empathetic to kids and to like understand that like what they say around their friends is not going to be what they say one-on-one, because I have seen kids who are like diehard Andrew Tate fans who have come up to me during lunchtime and we will debate every single one of his points until these kids start to like think about things more deeply, because they will be willing to think about things more deeply if you get down to their level and like, approach them like human beings and talk to them one-on-one. If you're with a group of friends, that's never going to happen. But one-on-one, it's something that's it's the way to get to them and get them to be good young men if you want that.
I mean, that's such a great point to hint on, because that's honestly like the kind of thing that I'm trying to establish and use this platform for, to speak about men's mental health and to really change that narrative, to really go out to therapy, to really think about being in tune with your emotions and not just drown it out through like how much money you have, how many girls you can get, all that stuff, right? because of what I went through, like I didn't have a figure to really talk about mental health, all that stuff. I mean, the only thing closest to it was probably like, like Wong Fu Productions and how they like created films around that. And but at a young age, I didn't really understand that. But I think it's such a good point, and you basically just pointed out what I'm trying to do here, and especially in the Asian community too. It's putting gender aside, Asian Americans and mental health is already in a whole thing in itself. It's I see lots of videos on whether it's Next Shark or something where like kids are telling their parents about true passions that they want, trying this whole mental health thing, and then their parents basically just shitting on them for it's not doable and all that stuff. Obviously that's a whole like another hour episode we can talk about. But thank you so much for bringing that up, because that's what I'm truly passionate about and really trying to change the narrative on, because at the end of the day, like we need to take care of our mind before, because it's really going to affect everything else. For me to always bottle things up, for me not to talk about my mental health with my friends and stuff like that, it really didn't put me in a great, I guess, position. And really, I think if I was more self-aware when I was in high school, I think I would have been able to deal with a lot of my problems a lot sooner at that point.
Yeah. I think we just need to get over the fear of it sounding weak or cringy or like whatever. Because like get into those deep conversations. I don't know, like be vulnerable. Like I'd rather be cringy and vulnerable and like happy as an adult.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Amanda, obviously we can talk for hours just about like story and these many topics that we're super passionate about. And then thank you again for being very vulnerable, being courageous to even talk about a lot of these stories that you've shared. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't have the same courage and vulnerability as you. So thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to be on here. Hope this was like just a great conversation, and you got to know me a little bit more too.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah. All right. So let's go into like the more talk showy host. This is like some new segments that I'm trying out here.
Yeah.
So the first one, because of time, I'll do maybe only one word, and it's song association. And the reason why I had the idea is because obviously you did a radio show, and you would be like, all right, here's like this music. And it made me super happy. I think it was your first episode, the second episode, you played Nikki, and I was like, yo, that's my girl. That's the girl right there. So I was going to do a random word generator, but I think I'm just going to go off the top of my head. So I'm going to say a word, and I won't force you to sing, but I encourage you to sing it.
I can't sing. I can't sing.
Or maybe like a verse, and I'll take a verse, and then I will also embarrass myself. You can give me a word, and then
I'm also so bad with lyrics. Like I don't. Oh, I thought it was gonna be like I'll give you a word, and then you give me a song, and then you talk about the meaning of that. So I don't know about singing.
Try. I mean, if you do like it, if you get it a try. I mean, if you just speak the lyrics, I'll take that. I won't force you to sing, but I'll give you the opportunity for you to tell me a word, and then I'll have to like sing a song.
Okay,
I don't have pipes. I'm not gonna even acknowledge. I'm not gonna deny. All right, so the word I'm gonna give you is love.
Oh my god.
Yeah. There's so many songs. Well, we'll see which one resonates in your head.
Right now, this is actually so bad, and I don't want to go into why it's so bad, because I'm not gonna go into why.
Yeah.
There's a song right now that I found on my Discover Weekly, because Spotify is reading me for filth. It's called Friends That Kiss. Not gonna go into the reasoning.
Yeah.
But that is the song. That's the first song that came to my mind when you said love. And I'm definitely not gonna sing it.
Yeah. Okay. What's the lyric? Just please state the lyric.
Oh man. I also like I'm really bad with like matching titles of songs with artists, so I don't remember the artist's name.
Yeah.
But a lyric there is it's not gonna be 100% correct, but essentially it's like I know you don't treat me like you treat everyone else. Maybe we'll just be friends that kiss, right? So like I'm definitely missing some lyrics there, but the whole thing is like, it's clear there's something there.
Yeah.
But also there's something that, it doesn't go beyond being friends that kiss.
Yeah.
So that's my That's my. So
is love a lyric in that song? I think that's what I was trying to
I
get at.
think I don't remember if the word love is used explicitly in there. I don't remember, but I do think that there is something. I think it is very clear from the way that the singer is singing that there is a clear love there, right? And like they have to play this backtrack of like this voicemail where it's like, hey, like just thinking about you, like I can't stop thinking about you, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And so like it's clear that love is there, and that's kind of where my mind is at with that.
Okay.
But I don't know the lyrics all enough to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was trying to get at, where like I say a word and you'd be like for example with love, like if you give me love, I'd be like seeing Justin Bieber's like Somebody to Love.
Oh
You
my
know that
God.
kind of
Okay,
sense?
got
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
got you, got
But
you, got
I know you were getting at though.
Okay.
All right.
We could redo that in one of you.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, I'll give you a chance for me to embarrass myself.
Time.
Time. I just thought I don't know who that sing that song, but like time after time. I don't know who sings that, but that's the thing I thought of.
I also was
Okay, all right. It's a common thing. Okay. I was trying to think of any other time. I don't know why I'm blanking so much. But I did this segment just because like I'm big into music, and like I also want to see like where your music genre was, especially because like when I first heard like you were playing Nicki, and like like I know you. Obviously it was a different time in your life. Like you were playing Keshi too, and usually we, as the Asian community, we associate Keshi with like the set.
I know. No. My music taste has grown. I still listen to Nicki.
Okay.
I don't listen to Keshi as much anymore. Joji came up on my like, because like Spotify will not let me forget that I had a big Joji phase, and so it keeps playing it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've been listening to Doechii a lot. I don't know if you know Doechii. She's a rapper. Really, really great. All I can say is she's really, really great. She's like the first rapper that I've like listened to her entire discography. Whereas like other rappers I'll like, but I won't like listen to their whole like set. So she's great.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hope you guys enjoyed that song segment.
Sorry, I fumbled it.
No, that's okay. No, we're gonna take a quick break and we're gonna get into questions from the audience and then the big three questions. So
Cool.
Yeah. All right, Amanda. So let's get into questions from our audience. Frankly, I'm gonna start with the ones that are coming from one of your good friends.
I wonder what it is.
Michelle Mark said, "How do you become tall?" Can you please explain the inside joke behind that?
Listen. Michelle and Tara in high school, I don't know if we were talking about a talent show or what, or maybe I said something about I don't know if I have a talent or whatever, and they're like, your talent is being tall, and I didn't think it was that funny.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, sure.
But you know them, they're like
yeah. The moment, I forgot who said it first, but the moment one of them said it, like, I'm pretty sure it must have been Tara, because all I remember is Michelle, like, not being able to breathe because she was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at this point, it's funnier that you find that funny.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, like, what is the joke here? But, like, for the rest of my adult life, any single time I'm, like, down on myself, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm good at anything. It's okay, man, you're good at being tall. And I'm like, bro, you're going to be responsible for my mental health crisis.
Fair enough.
How do I become so tall? I don't know. My grandfather was tall. There was one night as a high schooler where, this is weird perception. Oh, this is a funny story about how my perception of being tall got to me, where it wasn't so much of a perception, but I was like, I want to be taller. Like at this point I was like 5'7" I'm 5'9" now, so I did grow. But I was just like, dang, like what if I can hit 6 feet? Like if I want to be tall, might as well be the best at it, right? When I tell you, I was chugging milk like crazy. That's not even how that works.
No.
One night I was working on my homework or something. I chugged maybe like a third of a gallon of milk. When I tell you, I vomited all. Yeah. I didn't know that would happen, but I did.
That's so crazy.
I was trying to live up to the reputation of being tall.
Bro, you took an identity and like tried to make it like such a be the best at it. When you didn't, you need to. It is no control over it.
Yeah, and it's literally not even a personality trait. It's a height. It's like a physical trait. That's crazy.
Okay. So this is from Elizabeth Tran, who's my twin. Shout out to you. Interesting one. What is your favorite thing about Randy? Even though we just had this long conversation about knowing each other now.
I know. I feel like we're just getting to know each other. So similar to what you said when we first started the episode, I think like in less eloquent words, I think like your vibe and your presence has always been very comforting and like very safe. And I say that as someone, you might have picked up on this when you're listening to my college podcast, or radio show, but I was very, and in a lot of ways am like still anti-man in the sense that as it applies to like a patriarchal world, right? Like I am very suspicious and I don't often feel safe around men because like one, they've either have tried to like get with me when that's clearly not what I want as a queer person, or they've always seen me as like a threat in some way because I'm not feminine, or they're just violent. And so like, and I have bad vibes, bad relationships with my dad. So I've always had a very like not positive relationship with a lot of men, or like the concept or existence of men in general. And just being a woman in the US, it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
That being said, I feel like from the get go, like that's when I know that when I do meet a man who like I don't feel threatened by, or I feel like completely safe by, like that is such a big thing for me. And I think like immediately, even though we did not know each other, or like we haven't spent a lot of time with each other, like I could already tell that you're someone who is very, very, very kind, and make sure that everyone feels safe and everyone around him is good. And I think that that is like, I can already say that's like my favorite thing about you. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that I can provide that kind of space for you. This is also another question from Elizabeth. I think you dove into this, but what was your favorite part about teaching?
Um, Definitely my favorite, and sometimes it could be your least favorite on a bad day, but my favorite part is honestly like being around like kids, right? Like, um, it's not for everyone. I'll have to say, like, I understand when people are like, I can't, I respect kids, I don't want to be around them, but like these kids, maybe because I see how much like life they have in them and how excited they are about like doing things that excite them, and like that's something that I want to nurture myself, like that I have that such a deep respect for them. But I just love being around them, and then the relationships that you build around with them are just so touching. Like, um I mentioned the one earlier who I'm still in touch with via her teacher now, and like I had a lot of students who like meant something to me. Like I had a student who had a mental health crisis in my classroom, and it really like it was really scary and it was really tough. But and she was in a really really bad place, and like I really jumped in and like and kind of try to become her like mentor, right? Just beyond being just a teacher, just being like I'm here for you whenever.
Yeah.
And like her late like for the rest of that year, she like looked up to me so much, and then I got scared because I was like, oh my god, I don't want to misstep. But on during graduation, right? Like, like the kids come up and they shake your hand and whatever. She like ran up and like completely like after she got her certificate and ran over to me instead of like walking like whatever the way you would across the stage to get your picture done. She just gave me the biggest hug, and then she's the only kid that I gave a hug up to on that stage. But I was just like that shit just matters, right? Like those individual relationships, those like the people you care for, the kids you care for, like that is like the most beautiful thing that you'll ever take from teaching, is those individual relationships and those moments that will forever affect you and maybe forever affect those kids. Yeah.
Wow, that's oh my god, it's beautiful. I literally see it now. I'm just crying on the inside. So Amanda, let's get into the big three questions. These are three questions that I feel like will leave an impact on our viewers. And the first one I have for you is if someone came up to you that had your similar journey, similar struggles, similar life experiences, what advice would you give to them?
I I feel like we touched upon some of the things as we were going through the podcast, but I do think in terms of like perfectionism, because I think that's the biggest thing, and I don't know if I've given a direct answer to that. I think to that point, I think like just be okay with letting go, right? Just be okay with just dropping the ball and things. And honestly, like start failing at more things. I know I talked about how I was making that cake and it did not turn out well at all. But I'm happy that I was like, I woke up one day and I'm like, actually, I'm gonna make a cake today. And then I did it, right? Because I think like the hardest part when you are a perfectionist who doesn't start things because you're afraid of failure is starting those things, right? So the moment I went to Stop and Shop today instead of clocking in at work because I work from home on Fridays was going to Stop and Shop and buying those things. The moment I bought those things, I was like, groceries are expensive. If I buy these things, I'm gonna make this cake. I got it. Um, so start putting yourself in the position to fail at things, right? Because at least if you're like me, failing at things is the first step to like breaking out of this habit. And they can just be small things. It could be making a cake. It could be drawing a picture of your favorite cartoon character. I don't know. Just do something and fail at it, and then like be like, that wasn't that bad, and then move on, or keep working at it if you want to get better at it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, was there any, I know you said you touched on the perfectionism part of it, but was there anything else that you wanted to give in terms of advice? I didn't want to like move on without, I feel like there was probably a little bit more that you wanted to speak on it.
Yeah, I just feel like we had talked about so much. I think one more plug for taking care of your community at a time like this. Like, I think like that's my biggest advice right now because I think a lot of people are feeling anxious about the world, and they're feeling helpless. But something that I think about often is, um, our parents have been through so much, right? Our families, have seen war, and people all over the world now, like Gaza, Sudan, Congo, like they're all seeing war, and they have no choice but to go on and to push on. And so, like, if we are in a place where like you're not actively being attacked and such, like, not to doubt that like you might be going through your own struggles, but like do what you can to take care of those around you and to like pay attention to the world as well, because like they don't have the privilege of looking away, we don't have the privilege of looking away. And so like get reinvested in your community and like show your community that you care for them, because I promise you your community will show you that they care for you back. As someone who had gone through, who needed a lot of support, whether it was through teaching or like my other things, like at the end of the day the people who had me were my family and my friends, right? Like it wasn't like the Maryland or Baltimore giving me money to like buy stuff for my students. It was like my community around me donating things to me, right? And in the way that our community takes care of us, like I like always like give back in small ways, right? If it's not monetarily, with your time. If it's not with your time, then with your kindness, like do something. And yeah, yeah.
Beautifully said. The second question I have for you is, what does becoming the highest version of yourself mean to you, and how are you doing that today?
I think being the highest version of myself right now at this point in my life is letting myself grow to who I want to be at this stage in my life. Because there's so much, it's so new right now. Because I like, I think this is like month 3 of being back in Boston. It's kind of just letting my like roots take place and take hold, and see what comes out of it. Um, and I've always kind of lived my life without this specific big goal, right? But I think instead of trying to figure out what that goal is or enforcing a new big lofty goal, I think for me it's just about taking it day by day, and not being angry with myself for being the type of person who wants to take it day by day. Because I think for a long time not having a goal, I was just like, oh, man, I feel like I could have done so much more of myself if I like set these goals. um, but I've learned that like a lot of those thoughts came from a sense of like, oh, I need to set a goal for myself professionally, right? Like specifically professionally. But then I've also learned that like I'm not the type of person who like wants to seek validation from what my career is going to be. Like I want to wake up every day, like all I want in my life is to be happy, right? I want to wake up every day and do things that make me happy, and like to make the people around me happy. And so like to be the highest version of myself, I think what is important to me is like being okay with like taking it easy on myself, and also just like being a good person and being a good person to those around me, because at the end of the day that has been what has brought me the most happiness, right? Not necessarily my career, not necessarily like money, whatever. It's just being good. And I know that feels that's like a basic answer, but like I think that's where I've landed on what makes me, be the highest version of myself.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And however I can help you with that, let me know, and I'll be happy to, do what I can just to support you in that journey, because I think it's honestly a beautiful journey, and I'm on that same one, just like trying to figure out, who I am and what life I want to build. I think it's very fuzzy right now. So just trying to build and, like you said, be happy. It's I know with happiness, like obviously any feeling, it's temporary, but like I feel like that's all we are striving to do, and we can't get there. Obviously, there's gonna be days where it's not the case,
Yeah.
but to kind of have that sense of building the life you want is everything that we've ever been striving for. Um, and then my final question is, if you can think of someone that would be great on this podcast that you can connect me with, who would that person be?
Already plugged him once as my middle school boyfriend. I think Waylon would be great on this show. I think he has gone through a lot of things that he might feel comfortable talking about on the show. And I also feel like getting a perspective, like I had mentioned, like I don't know too much about what it means to tap into mental health when it comes to like being a man, like an adult man, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that Waylon has some thoughts about that. And also, like, speaking of like chill people who make me feel safe all the time, like Waylon's gonna be one of them.
For sure.
And so I think like he would have a lot of cool things to bring to the podcast.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your stories. Thank you so much for just giving advice to our viewers. I feel like there was so much gems of like, I don't know, nuggets of advice how to like keep moving forward, and I feel like you answered a lot of questions that I feel like the viewers can really take forward and honestly just help with their mental health and build a life forward. So I just want to say this was an amazing experience for me getting to know you more, and I feel like again how I felt like I feel like in high school like we probably would have been good friends just talking about like the real shit and the deep shit. Obviously I would have been like what's it called, like maybe less vulnerable, but like I feel like we would have been super great on just like talking about all this deep stuff. Maybe that we probably had our own radio show in high
Yeah,
school.
honestly.
But yeah, was there anything else that maybe that we didn't plug, or anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to know about me?
Um, I feel like I would have lots of questions
Yeah.
that I could ask you
Hmm.
about yourself that would extend this far beyond the time
Yeah, true,
limit.
true, true, true.
But in terms of like plugging stuff for me, I think I'm all good. I think you gave me thank you for sharing this platform for me to talk about all these things. I think I've talked about a lot of these things in other aspects of my life, maybe from a more jaded perspective. And so it's really nice to approach this from a place of like vulnerability and like care as opposed to like frustration and like what do we do about this, right? But like just to kind of just let it out and like I don't know, like be very forward and positive thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you again. And guys, if you like this episode, please share, rate this 5 stars, comment, subscribe, keep the community expanding, growing. That's how we're going to do it, through your help in doing that. And yeah, so let's fall in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. Love you guys.